What does it all mean, Walt?
All of what?
Like, all of this.
Well, I think people try their best to generate ideas that are meaningful and powerful, and then see the way those ideas are shaped by the ideas of other people.
That's great. But, just look, man, at where we've ended up by thinking that way.
It's not so bad, James.
But it is, though, Walt, and I don't think I'm ever going to understand it.
Look, I know it's hard, but we can sleep easy knowing that they'll never print Questing Beast ever again.
I hate it, Walt, and it's yucky. The word yucky is such a weird thing for me to say. I've never said the word yucky. I honestly, I saw it in the script and I was going to say, we got to change this because I don't say yucky. It's funnier me saying the word yucky.
There you go. I also like that you just dropped the stoner because the
sure.
real you is opposed to Questing Beast as a concept.
I know that it has death touch and it's a 4/4. Everything else on that card, I forget. It can't be blocked by 2 or less.
2 or less power. It has
death touch and haste.
A death touch and haste. I think it has trample over planeswalkers. So if it deals excess damage to a planeswalker, it deals that much to the player.
What?
And damage it deals can't be prevented.
We're going to talk about
And it has Rampage 5. No.
So welcome to episode 10 where we discuss Questing Beasts.
For an hour and a half.
Oh my lord.
Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast by the Greensboro Commander community. It's the GCP by the GCC, helping you to have better games of Commander. I'm your host, Walt.
And hello, Commander players. I'm so excited. It's episode 10.
It's finally episode 10. James jumped the gun 2 episodes ago and said the next episode is going to be it. You had to wait a full episode before we got
2
there.
2 weeks worth of time in our reality.
4 weeks worth of time for us. Yeah. It's been too long.
So
Look,
painful.
We got so many questions. So the first thing I want to say, I'm getting ahead of myself, James.
True. I know exactly what you're going to say because the little red light in front of us is flashing.
It's blinking.
It's blinking
at us.
And I know exactly who it is.
It's the Space Commanders
Again,
from
these guys.
The deep depths of the galaxy. So, you know what time it is? It's time to get commanded.
Growth happens within, but its origin is those around us.
Oh my god, they're getting weirdly philosophical and sentimental.
I know, right? I know. It's almost like the writer of the episode was stretching.
That's so good.
Look, I agree with the statement. I agree with the statement, by the way.
And I reckon what the Space Commanders are telling us here, because they knew our episode 10 was going to be on community questions.
Oh, because they listened. They heard the last episode.
Yeah,
they know.
Well, they command us. We talk about it, and they listen.
That's true.
This podcast is only for the Space Commanders.
It's true. Yeah, the fact that you guys listen is a nice bonus.
We did not realize we were going to publish it, and then the Space Commanders were like, yeah, chuck it on YouTube. See how it does.
SoundCloud, why not?
But yes, this is episode 10.
It's episode 10.
Which is our community questions.
It's our community questions.
As Walt said, we got so many questions that we are staring down the barrel of a 6-page podcast.
For reference, it's usually 2.
Or 3 at a
3
stretch. Our
is
longest podcast episode was 2 hours, and that was 3 pages.
So, 6 hours. No. Look, most of the questions, thankfully, we can wrap up pretty short at the end. We've got a rapid fire questions at the end. I'd also like to stress again, I know I mentioned it last time when we were asking for the questions. If you don't hear your question answered here, and I haven't answered it directly somewhere, or James hasn't answered it directly, it means that it's going to be its own episode.
Yeah.
I'll say right off the bat, there's at least 2 to 3 episodes coming up that are purely because so many of you asked about it. Thank you for asking us questions.
Can we tease some upcoming episodes?
Oh,
because some of them are real. Can we? One or two?
I can tease. Well, look, one thing we got a lot of questions about, and it's actually going to be the first thing we're going to be talking about, is deck building.
Oh yeah, that was probably 80% of the questions that were asked.
Yeah,
deck building questions.
I'd say so. So look, we're going to be talking about a bunch of them today. But I think we're going to just make a full deck building tutorial. Like, I feel like I know there's like a bunch of them out there. I've sort of been hesitant to be committing to one because there's so many of them out there. But like, so many of you want to know, you know, like,
what's our template?
Yeah, what's your template? What's your template? So I'd be keen to make one. I think let's do it.
I'd be super keen to make a deck building episode because I think there's so many deck building episodes of other podcasts and other YouTube channels that are out there that have used the same cookie cutter template for years. And I don't think it's as applicable anymore in current Commander. I think there's more to talk about, personally.
I agree. I will note there that Command Zone had a very long-standing tutorial episode that I had watched myself many times.
They actually had a PDF printout you could get.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But they actually revisited it only a few months ago and changed some of their recommendations. So look, the format is becoming more and more popular. It's shifting. Precons are getting better and better.
More and more cards are getting printed for the format.
Yeah,
which is a big thing.
It's getting faster. It's getting more powerful. I love where Commander is as a format. But yeah, anyway, so I don't want to get too sidetracked. In fact,
deck building episode? Might go in. And another one that I really liked that I'm not going to spoil too much, but deck styles and play styles. So we got a lot of questions around specific, like, you know, is it Storm or Aristocrat? So we might do episodes in the future dedicated to certain play styles. But I'm not going to spoil that.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Let's do this.
We won't get ahead of ourselves. So we'll jump right in. So the first lot of questions are these deck building ones. We got so many. Like we said, we'll be making a full episode of them. I sort of tried to make it chronological. So sort of like the order that we make a deck, because we sort of got questions about every step of the process. So right off the bat, our first question comes from Stefan. Shout out to Stefan. Stefan is visiting us from the Netherlands. Plays a bunch of really powerful decks. Really lovely guy.
Oh my god, this guy sits at a table with no playmat and is like, yeah, my scrub land's okay to sit on this table.
Oh my god, the first time I saw him play a dual land, I was like, is that a proxy? And he said no, and I was like, can I stand 10 feet further away so there's no danger of me spilling my water all over it?
When Walt sees a card that's over $15, his wallet actually jumps out of his back pocket, grows a set of legs and runs.
I don't know if you saw me before when I was describing it, but my literally my hackles raise, like a wild animal, like in a corner.
The hairs on the back of your neck was standing on edge.
I'm become a little gremlin. I'm like, run away.
Okay, so regardless of what Stefan plays, what does Stefan ask us to
he asked us a question.
Yeah, he did ask us a question.
Yes. Stefan asked us, how do you pick a commander to build a deck around? And Aaron asked us a sort of similar question. Is it better to build a deck picking the commander first or the playstyle first? So what do you reckon, James?
Such a good question. I'm going to kind of piece this back together, but it's funny because I usually stumble onto a commander that I want to play. So I'll be flicking through someone's binder, or my own binder, actually, and I will see a legendary creature, and I'll read its effect, and I'll go, surely there's a deck around this. Surely. So I think a lot of us actually find that we stumble onto commanders that we want to play. We actually spoke about, I referenced Gulta was a commander that I specifically stumbled onto in the stores
you
trade
saw in
binder.
the binder.
I was like, that's got to be a deck. Yoink. Brutaclad was one of those cards that, again, one of my favorite decks that I was trying to build Izzet artifacts, was trying with Dalikos for a while, didn't work, kept going through, and then stumbled onto Brutaclad. So stumbling on to a commander is totally an acceptable way of doing it, but I think there's heaps of ways to do it. And to be honest, with Aaron's question where he says, is it better to pick the style or the commander first? I think if you're got a decently sized commander collection already, I think pick the playstyle first. So something that we talk about a lot is we actually, in our last episode, we talked about disassembling a deck.
We did, yeah.
And we talked about how we've got we've got a lands deck. Let me disassemble this lands deck and build a different lands deck. So there's so you've disassembled Rada and has built, is it Averna?
Averna, yeah.
I've now played it. Super cool. A really good deck. But that's what I would think about if you're kind of an experienced commander player, is think about what playstyles haven't you dabbled in, pick a playstyle, go on to EDH Rec, look at that theme, find a commander in there. The other thing I think is the main point that I want to get across with this question is, why are you building a commander deck? If you can answer...
Wow, real philosophical there.
Look, I mean, you heard my stoner voice at the start of this episode. But I think that if you can answer really easily why you're building a new commander deck, you should be able to choose. You should from there be able to go, I know exactly what commander, I know exactly what playstyle, I know exactly where to go from there.
That's interesting. I feel like I can actually, if I think about the decks that I've built recently, if I just identify why I'm building them, it normally answers what kind of commander I'm looking for anyway. Like I think I told you I wanted to build a blue Spellslinger deck because it was something I just didn't own.
And don't do.
No, I don't do at all.
Yeah.
And in the process of doing that, I ended up building 2 decks. I built a Spellslinger deck and I built a sort of big spells tribal deck. I also wizard tribal deck, Kaza.
Yay, got mentioned.
Got mentioned every episode.
We're 10 minutes in.
It's a new record. Yeah. So that's interesting because then just knowing that was how I decided which commanders I wanted to build. Because I was like, okay, I want to build a Spellslinger deck. I was like, okay, I don't want to play any of the really typical Spellslinger decks. Yeah. So what's out there that's kind of weird? And then I was looking through a binder and someone was like, this guy's kind of cool.
So like it's exactly, so if you can answer why am I building a new deck, if I want a challenge. Okay, what kind of challenge do you want? A budget challenge. Okay, now I need to pick a commander that's going to be really easy to build on a budget. I want to play outside of my playstyle. Okay, let's have a look at what colors you play firstly. Let's choose different colors. And now what kind of style do you like? Let's choose outside that style. Why am I building a new commander deck? Because my play group's got too many powerful decks and I want a powerful commander.
Yeah.
There you go. There's another reason. So now you need to find a commander that's like in that top tier of meta that you're building for.
Yeah, for sure. That
so in answer to the question, both.
I completely agree. I think either approach is totally reasonable. I think especially, I totally agree. These days I usually come at it from a playstyles perspective. I will say that it's totally acceptable in this day and age when they are printing so many legendary creatures for that to be the reason you build the deck. Like, if you're just playing, Commander Legends 2 Baldur's Gate, and you just see a couple of legends and you're kind of like, this is cool, just build it. Like,
why not?
There's nothing to lose.
Realistically, especially around a new set, if you're a good drafter, or if you're drafting a lot, generally because you're building within the set, if you build the commander deck, most of the cards that are going to directly synergize with it are from that set.
Yeah.
So if you're drafting and you go, this is a cool legendary creature, in your head while you're drafting, just be like, this is a big commander card. This is a big commander card. I'll take this.
Yeah, my Arami deck was built after the Commander Legends draft because I drafted Arami, and admittedly, most of the deck that I had on that day is gone. But I ended up building with a lot of the cards from Commander Legends. I think
Crow Dark Tidings, for example.
Yeah, Crow Dark Tidings is amazing in the deck.
Milliken is in there.
Milliken's in there. I definitely threw in the Monarch Blue one. The what are they called? The cycle. You know how there's like each one is an enchantment. ETB is courts. The courts.
Court of
Cunning.
That's
Court
of
Cunning.
It's one blue and a blue.
One blue, and
you become the monarch.
Yeah. In your upkeep, I think if you're the monarch,
mills 10.
In the beginning of your upkeep, yes, you choose any number of players and they mill 2 or mill 3, and then if you're the monarch, they mill 10. Yeah, it's amazing.
I run that in Scarab God actually as well.
Yeah. Well, I kind of tried to make it more about milling my opponents as well, and that was a great card in the deck. But yeah, I totally agree.
I think so. All right.
We're actually done with this first page.
1 of 6.
So 5 to go.
Oh my god, there we go.
What?
Oh bloody hell.
Oh my god.
That came right back at me.
And somehow mine flew across the entire...
Yeah, mine ended up on my chair under my butt. That was
there
incredible.
You go. So, still on deck building. We're moving through the chronology of building the deck. So we've chosen our commander. Jordan asks, do you have any deck building principles that other people would disagree with?
Whoa. Good question. We were literally just talking about deck building template.
Yeah.
I know that you're quite a big believer in making sure that you've got, 10 ramp spells, 10 card draw spells, this many board wipes, this many single target. I'm going to pass to you here and kind of try and think because...
Yeah, I don't think I do a lot that people would disagree with. I think, to be honest, the aspect of my deck building that people would probably find the most challenging, having spoken to people about it a lot, is that I build budget decks.
Yeah.
People often, I think because I build so many decks and cumulatively I spend so much money, people are often like, if you're going to spend that amount of money, why don't you just build a deck that's like this budget? And to be honest, I just really enjoy the challenge of finding weird cards. I also, as I've said before, am kind of a Magic hipster where I really enjoy using things that other people don't use.
I was actually just about to make a joke that links so perfectly with this. Your deck building rule break is that if you play white, which you do a lot, you don't run Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile. That's like a hipster going to a cafe in Melbourne and being like, I'll have a tea because everyone drinks coffees these days.
Oh my god, that's like next level hipster.
That's so hardcore. It's not even deconstructed coffee anymore. The guy's drinking tea now. And for anyone listening outside of Melbourne, another equivalent, I don't know. That's such a Melbourne-based joke.
That is a very Melbourne thing. It's true. One thing I will say about, Jordan's asking about the sort of general deck building rules that we use. He's asking which ones people would disagree with, but he's sort of asking about our rules. One thing I will say, early on, I saw like what the deck building rules were, and I was like, I saw the command zones recommended 10 ramp, 10 card draw, whatever, and I was like, I don't need to listen to that. Like, I can make changes or whatever, and if you're new to the format, I will actually say, because a lot of people sort of then go the opposite way from Command Zone and kind of say like, you don't need a range, you don't need this, like just do it your way or whatever. I don't agree with that. I think, and the analogy here I think of is actually martial arts. I did Kung Fu for about 3 years.
Did you really?
I did, yeah.
Oh my god, I'm genuinely learning something new about Walt.
New information for James. And there's a thing that I think is integral to most martial arts, and I would even argue most arts, which is that generally you are taught an extremely strict set of rules, and then when you are a complete master of those rules, you're allowed to break them.
So it's like you have to know the game to its absolute, like, this is it in the book. You have to know front cover to back cover, then you can take liberties.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, I ended up kind of coming back to the command zones and mounts, and for a long time I still built decks that I wanted to play and included cards I wanted, but I always had 10 bits of ramp and 10 bits of card draw and 5 bits of removal and 5 wraths or whatever. And like, you won't go significantly wrong, I will say, by following those rules. And when you've done it a bunch, you will start to understand why those rules exist the way they are, and that's when you're allowed to break them. Really
interesting. And as a visual, I now want everyone to imagine Walt in crane position, standing on one leg on a post with JLK going 10 ramp, and then Walt kicks and changes position, and then JLK goes 10 card draw. He kicks again and changes position.
Oh, James, it comes full circle because they made that bloody Cobra Kai show, and the cast from Cobra Kai play Commander. They played Commander together. Yeah. Several of them have been on game nights.
There you go. So Kung Fu is just Magic the Gathering.
That's the thing. Do you think you have rules that you deviate from?
It's funny. I don't think I'm a radical deck builder in any way, shape, or form. I'm pretty boring, and like because I don't have the budget restraint, which forces creativity. Which is something that I really admire about, because you could spend the money on cards, you could do that, that's totally fine. But because you put that constraint on you, it forces creativity. I don't think there's anything about my deck building that's really radical. The one thing that I'd say that I do that I get comments on is how much ramp I include. So everyone says you should minimum include this much ramp. If your commander's really low CMC, maybe you don't need as much. Think about the mana curve. I don't give a shit. I want so much mana. I would generally include like 13 to 15 pieces of ramp in any deck. And thinking about it, I think there's a couple of reasons why. I'm a big Grixis player. Black, green, red is... But black, green. Did I just say green? Green. Oh my god. No. Blue. Black, blue, red is the colours that I play in. Terrible ramping colours. They're really good at rituals, and they're really good at like
artifacts.
Big
probably.
mana. Yeah, artifact rocks is the big thing. But like dark ritual, mana geyser, they're the things that fast mana acceleration in those colors, right? With rocks, I generally include like 13 to 15 rocks in a Grixis deck because there's no other way to ramp. Really. Like, you can do, like, Cryptghast with swamps, but that's gonna die. So, the reason why I do it, and a lot of people comment because, like, the first 3 turns, I'm like,
you empty your hand. It happens so often. Yeah.
But then, because I include such good card draw, because, like, I preference heavy ramp, heavy card draw, I'm constantly doing something. Might not be winning the game, but I'm still doing stuff.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I get comments on is, why am I still playing rocks in late game? And it's because sometimes everything will get bounced to my hand, like return on online permanence. That includes mana rocks. So it might be turn 5 and I've hit every land drop, but I'm only on 5 lands. There's 3 other green decks at the table that have all ramped with, Kodama's Reach and stuff like that. And so I have to then replay my rocks to get them out. The other thing that I really like about rocks, they tap when they come in. They're ready to go. Most land ramp comes in tapped.
Sure.
So usually you can, play it and then tap it and do something else.
Yeah, we talked about that in the order episode.
Sequencing, yeah. Which I actually listened back to that and I was like, oh, that actually makes so much sense. So when I'm in late game now, sometimes I'll put cards that I don't think are needed to the back of my hand. But then I've noticed with mana rocks, I can still play them and do something on my turn on turn 7, and then turn 10, I'm now 2 mana again ahead, so I've got something else to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a big believer in mana rocks, and I get, Vandal Blasted a lot, and it bounced to hand, and that's really devastating. But because I'd play outside of green and white and cards that ramp with lands, it's funny, white actually does really well on lands. They hit every land drop. But Grixis... Yeah. You're screwed.
Can't do it.
So that's probably the rule that I break the most of.
Yeah, I probably agree with that, actually. I remember saying to you once, actually, I said something like, I was joking, but I was like, are you always stacking your deck? Because I swear you always go Sol Ring Signet. And then you said to me, you were like, look, Sol Ring doesn't always appear in my hand.
Yeah.
But... I play a lot of rocks. So the likelihood that I have one in my opening hand and the likelihood that I have 2 is high. And I see it.
Well, sure. I just counted in Scarab God, there are 12 rocks.
Wow.
12 rocks. I think 12. Yeah, it was 12 or 13, something around that. And then I looked in Niv Mizzet, which is my CDH deck.
Oh, it
is all rocks, baby. Yeah. It is there's 20 something. And when you think about fast mana, of course, you're playing CDH, it's a different format. But rocks are just awesome. Go rocks. I love rock. Woo!
rock on, says James. I'm so sorry.
That was a bad pun, and I was trying not to laugh because I had a mouthful of water.
Yeah, but... Well, there you go. That's what you get. Speaking of deck building, let's say we've thrown together we've got our template, we've thrown some cards together.
We've broken some rules,
maybe, if we're a master. And Aaron is now going to ask us, what is a, quote, win more, end quote, card, and why should we cut them?
I really love the fact that Aaron has asked this question, because Aaron, in my opinion, doesn't play a lot of win more cards. I don't think.
Maybe not.
I don't think he does. So I'm really interested. I might talk to Aaron after this and say, why did you ask this question? Because I don't think you play them. But... okay, I think you can define a win more card pretty well. You're a very good deck builder.
I think a win more card is a card with a high ceiling. So, when it's good, it's amazing. But a low floor. So when it's bad, it's very bad.
Does nothing.
Yes, exactly. So typically, the way that I think about it in Magic terms, and Commander terms, is does this card do anything on an empty board? And if the answer is no, it's probably a win more card. We've also sometimes referred to these cards as enhancers when we talked about our deck building and stuff. Look, there's nothing wrong with having them. I have a Flicker deck and I have a Panharmonicon in that deck because it's incredible. It doubles all the ETBs. It's worth having. But most of your deck should be the cards that do stuff on their own. They should be not the win more cards, not the cards that go turn your I'm in the lead to I'm miles ahead. You should have them, but they should be a pretty small fraction of your deck. I seriously run, if I had to estimate, I reckon it's 5 to 6. In a commander deck, in total.
I would probably agree. I think it's really funny that my mind's on CDH for some reason. That CDH doesn't have win more cards.
No. Outside of combos.
Outside of combos, 100%. But every card has a purpose in the deck on its own. It is either a card draw engine or it is a combo win. They are the
or
reasons.
It's ramps you ahead by 3 mana. It's hyper efficiency. Yeah.
I would agree with you that a win more card is a card that has a very low floor. The other thing that I would classify as a win more card is anything that, if played correctly, blows the game out of proportion. So
that's true.
I would say if it's played in the right synergy or at the right time, it will just completely win the game or make it impossible to win. That doesn't mean that it's a combo or anything like that. It's just really, really game warping. But I don't think win more cards, because the second part of the question is when should we cut them, or why should we cut them? I don't think you should always cut them, because a Panharmonicon in an ETB deck, you shouldn't cut that. It's really good. But if someone asks you, and this is what I see a win more card as, and probably answering when you should cut it. If you're playing at a table and you cast a card, and someone at the table kind of judgmentally goes, "Why are you running that?" And you have to explain why you're running it. It's like, it's really good when my commander's out, and when this enchantment is down, and this happens. This is really good. If you're answering that like that, cut that card.
Yeah.
It is not doing anything else in the deck. Because did anyone go, "Wow, that's really good"? No, someone was confused why you're running it. If anyone is at the table is confused why you're running a card, it's probably a win more card.
Yeah, I think I would further separate the cards here into two sort of micro categories, which is and it's to do with how many cards in your deck the card synergizes with. Because I think the kind of win more cards that you should be cutting are the ones where, like, basically exactly what you just described. It's when someone says to you, "This card is great when I have these specific 2 cards in my deck." Not the commander, right? It's different if it synergizes with your commander, because your commander you will always have access to for the whole game,
A great example of this is Obosh, which we were talking about in the last episode, but that can lead to a full deck disassemble because your commander costs 13 mana.
It's true. Like, that deck, yes, everything synergizes with Obosh, which is enough for it to be good in the deck. But if you're sort of scraping the barrel, or you're kind of saying to yourself, I know that this card is bad in these 10 scenarios, but if I have this card and this card, then it's amazing, then you should cut that card.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure. Yeah.
It's one of those things that if someone's confused why you're running it, you should probably be confused why you're running it too.
Unless you've got a really strong reason. Yeah.
Alright, we're building the deck. We've included some cards. We've probably included 2 more WinCon cards, so we cut them out. Now we're onto a very specific part of our deck building. Card draw. And Jordan has asked this question, which is really funny because I think Jordan does card draw really well in Commander.
I agree.
But Jordan has asked, what kind of card draw do you prefer? Passive, activated, or burst?
Interesting. I am going to straight away call out Jordan. I'm going to call him out because this is
I was going to do it if you didn't.
This is a leading question because everyone who knows Jordan's deck building really well knows that he absolutely adores burst draw. He swears by it. If you ever question his burst draw, he will be like, "What are you talking about?" He won't be aggressive. He's a lovely guy. I'm being stupid. But Jordan, I know what you're trying to get me to say. All right? Let's fight. No.
Oh my God. He was looking directly at his webcam when Walt said that. I was too. You were looking directly
my God.
into it.
Jordan, look, can you see me?
It's real burst card draw though. Like, I'm going to stick up for Jordan here. It's a sick way of drawing cards. I actually didn't know a burst card draw really until Jordan really showed me it. And it was in his Crewfix deck that he showed me it.
I feel like, sorry, before we get too carried away, we should probably explain what we mean by passive activated burst card draw.
Well, okay, so burst is really easy to explain. It's where you draw a lot of cards in one go.
Yeah.
And you've got all the cards in your hand.
And it's typically one card that's drawing us all those cards.
Great example, Mindspring.
Yeah, Mindspring's a great example. Like, Harmonize is burst card draw. I know one that Jordan loves is Rishkar's Expertise.
Sick card.
Really cool card. You draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and then you drop a 5-drop from your hand. That's so cool. Really cool card. So that's burst.
Yep.
So what would you describe as passive card draw?
Okay, well, passive card draw is actually my preferred form of card draw.
Okay.
I'm just going to answer the question now because passive card draw is where you'll slowly be drawing cards. A great example of this is Rhystic Study. That is a passive card draw engine in and of itself because eventually someone won't pay the 1 and you'll draw a card. It's only 1 card, but you're slowly, as the game goes on, continuing to draw.
Right, and sort of, I think we're calling it passive here because it's not requiring any input from us, right?
Correct.
If we just sit there with Rhystic Study on the table, I mean, look, these days at our store, most people are paying the 1 for Rhystic Study.
Well done, everyone, by the way. Bravo, you learned.
But we could also throw something like...
Phyrexian Arena
I was just going to say, Phyrexian Arena is a good example. So, like, no matter what, if we reach our upkeep, we're drawing a card, right? So it's doing it, but it's not requiring anything of us, and it's doing it over time.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I like passive card draw so much, I mean, Phyrexian Arena is great. 1 black and black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, lose a life, draw a card. You are just drawing 2 cards per turn. 3 mana enchantment means you're drawing 2 cards a turn. Loss of 1 life. We're playing Commander. Whoop-de-doo. Like, awesome. The reason why I love passive card draw so much is you don't need to take time out of your turn or make a game action to draw a card. If you set it up early enough and you're passively drawing through your game, you will have all the cards you need at the right time in your hand when you need them. That's my argument for passive card draw. Look, sometimes you won't, and sometimes you'll have to do, I'll quickly do a brainstorm here. Draw a bunch of cards, get the right one, and drop them. But like my Niv Mizzet deck in CEDH, it's really funny. A lot of CEDH decks will tutoring big card draw, but Niv does passive card draw so well. Every instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card.
Well, Niv is an interesting one. I almost feel like it bridges the line between passive and activated.
Because you could cast a...
Yeah, when you cast spells, that's kind of triggering it. So, like, I definitely see the appeal with passive. I've played it before. I play it in my deck still. To be honest, I think I lean mostly towards... activated, actually.
Yep.
Because I'm
should explain activated as
well. So activated I would differentiate from passive, and interestingly, like we're looking at the
perfect bridge
antonyms, right? Like it's like if you are passive, you're not engaging in something.
You don't have to do anything.
If you're active, you are providing input in some way, right? And so activated card draw in Commander is like something that triggers when we do something, is how I would describe it. So Beast Whisperer we talk about it a lot. It's just so good in any creature-based deck because every single creature you are casting is replacing.
It's really funny. In the right deck, like in my elf deck, I would consider that such good card draw that it's passive. Because I'm already casting all the creatures. I'd consider it passive.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean? That's interesting. I guess they would probably... You could subdivide activated into things that just do it no matter what, and then things you have to pay a cost to activate.
So like tap, pay a life, draw a card.
Yeah, something like that. I'm struggling to think of
Greed.
Greed's a great example.
Greed's a fantastic example.
Greed is a great example. I actually was just going to mention my Azor the Lawbringer deck. My first Commander deck ever.
I didn't even think about that.
And actually I still own that one. I've disassembled a lot of my old decks, but still got that one. But that one is Sphinx's Revelation on a creature, right? You pay blue, white. Maybe it's white, blue. I forget. And you draw X cards, gain X life. Where you pay X, obviously.
Sphinx's Revelation on a stick.
Yeah, exactly right. I think if I was to look at my decks, I play some passive, but not a lot. I definitely play a lot of activated, and a lot of burst. I think having burst is really important. I think no matter what, you should not have exclusively passive and activated.
Correct.
You should have at least some burst, because there's always going to be times in the game when you have 2 cards in your hand, you've got nothing better to do, but if one of those cards says draw 3 cards on it, like even if it's Harmonize, if you just sometimes just cast Harmonize, that's fine, and sometimes it's going to be the best card in your deck. So
it can draw the card you need.
if you can, because some colors are not so good at it, but I would always play at least some burst, no matter what. But I like activated because it lets you have those turns where you just go off. You know?
Yeah, the other thing that activated does as well is it can lean really heavily into synergies. I just talked about Greed. Greed is 3 and a black for an enchantment.
Yep.
And it's 1 black, pay 2 life, draw a card. That's the enchantment. That card, if you're in a life gain, life drain, paying life strategy, my God, that and Font of Agonies on field.
I knew you would say that.
It's weird. When I play Greed now, I'm like, I need to get Font of Agonies because it's almost a combo. Like you draw 4 cards, pay 4 life, and then at any speed, you can pay 2 mana and blow up a creature.
Yeah, that card's sick, actually. It's
so
specifically
good.
In your Liesa deck.
Yeah, it's
really
amazing.
like that. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. I agree. I think there's definitely a spot for all of them, but it depends what kind of deck you're building and what your preference is.
Now, I've got a question that is going to be difficult to answer. It actually came from Theo. What is your process of building a new Commander deck from start to finish? If you had to break it down.
So now we're kind of speed running the process.
Yeah, all right. Okay, let's say I lock you in a room and I go, right, well, go, build a deck, start to finish. What's your process?
Okay, so I know we talked about you can find a playstyle first, but once I find a playstyle, and you even alluded to this, I always find a commander, and that's my next step. I don't start. I know some people start building a deck and then they pick a commander to fit the deck. I never do that personally.
I've never done that.
No.
And if anyone does that, comment, because I really
tell us
want to
what you
know
do.
what your process is.
Yeah, I feel
That's
like
really
someone like
interesting.
Nick probably. I could see him doing something like that. Like he's built like a token deck, and then he's like, "Oh, I want it to be Adrix and Nev." You know?
Or another really great player at our store, Daniel, because Daniel plays a lot of standard.
Yes,
Daniel might be like building synergies in standard with standard cards, and then go, "Oh, there's this new Jund commander from New Capenna that works perfectly. I'll put him in."
Yes, I would agree with that.
Interesting. I would like to know if you build your deck before the commander.
Yeah, tell us for sure. So look, I picked my commander. I am a normie, and I go immediately to EDH Rec, and admittedly, I build on a budget, so I have just grabbed pretty much every card that I think looks good and is like $2 or less from EDH Rec. I chuck them all. I'm building on Moxfield. Moxfield's amazing. We're not sponsored, but holy balls, they're so good.
Yeah,
use Moxfield.
Best deck builder platform out there. It's hands down.
Every time I realize I don't have something, they add it. It's nuts. Anyway, I'm building on Moxfield. I'm checking every card I think looks good in EDH Rec. I then go through my whole collection of cards that I own, which admittedly is not enormous, but is like substantial. And I pick out anything that I think that might be interesting, like actually anything. At this point, I'm not being selective. I'm just being like, this seems like it might be good.
Yeah.
Then I look at other decks I own just to see what like my staples are, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So like I look at another deck and I'd be like, oh, that's right. You know, like
this is a no-brainer.
This is a no-brainer. I really like it. I'm going to play it anyway. Yeah, we'll chuck it in. Like, you know, I look at my green deck and go, oh, Reclamation Sage. That card's really, really good.
In any green deck?
Yeah, chuck it in.
Boulder Gate Recovery. Yeah, every green deck should run a Boulder Gate Recovery.
Yeah.
Literally every green deck should run Boulder Gate Recovery.
If you got the money, get it. 100% get it. Then I use Scryfall. I did in the last episode. No, I think 2 episodes ago I talked about how... the budget episode.
I
talked about how I use Scryfall.
Sure.
So listen to that episode if you want to know. I basically input a few things into the advanced search feature to find the cards that I really want. So then I find a bunch more cards, especially weird ones. This is the most creative part of my deck building. And then I use the Moxfield tag feature to tag every single card in the deck with anything that applies to it. So basically what you can do with Moxfield is you can be like, okay, Reclamation Sage. If I'm building a Flicker deck, I would give it the
ETB tag.
I would give it the ETB tag. It's going to be super relevant in a Flicker deck. And I'm going to give it target removal because that's a thing that it does, that it fulfills in the deck. And then the really cool thing is you can then sort your deck and it will show you the cards and it will show them in every category. So when especially if you're going by the numbers, you're going to look at it and go like, oh, sick, I've got my 10 bits of targeted removal or my 7 bits of targeted removal there. And you're going to look and you're going to be like, oh, this Flicker deck has 20 creatures with ETBs. That seems sweet.
I will make a really good point here that feature, when I figured out that feature on Moxfield, it changed deck building for me because I used to do it on my playmat and I used to literally put them in piles. But then you'd get to a weird stage where you're like, this card does 2 things. It draws me cards and it also drains my opponents. Like if I've got that strategy, let's say.
Yeah, well,
so
like,
which pile do I put this in?
Greed in your Liaisa deck, you'd probably give its card draw for
card
sure.
Draw.
But you also kind of have
life category.
It's a pay life thing.
Yeah, so so it fits in 2 categories. When I'm on a playmat, I've got 1 physical card. Where do I put it? Moxfield puts it in both because it's digital and computers are awesome. Yes. And it's just...
It also has a really cool... If you are someone who's used to building on a playmat... God, I just love raving about Moxfield. If you're someone who's used to building on a playmat, there's a view setting you can use on Moxfield. I believe it's called Visual Stacks, it basically lays it out exactly like you would on a playmat.
It shows you that top row, the name of the card and the mana costs,
and then you can just sort. Like if you have your tags, you can sort by tags, you can sort by mana value, you can sort by name, you can sort by rarity. Set anything you want, Moxfield can do it.
Oh my god, Moxfield, sponsor us.
Anyway, so like I've put a bunch of cards in this thing. I've tagged them all. At this point, I'm usually at like 150 cards. Oh, I'm also chucking the basics in. Like I just get a land count to like something reasonable so that I know like how many cards I've actually got. And then I just start cutting cards. And the first few are pretty easy. And the last few are really hard. So I usually get it down to like 115, 110. And then, to be honest, I used to cut it all the way down and then buy 100 cards. These days, I just tend to buy 110 cards. I place a singles order.
Yeah.
And that way, I usually make it so that I have a surplus of pretty much every category. So I've got
And then is it like a playtest process.
Yeah,
from
then
there
I
on in.
play tested. I'm kind of like, oh, I'm sort of missing ramp, and I sort of need a bit more. Chuck in that extra ramp spell I bought, and then I'm like,
Nice.
oh, actually, I need more finishers. Chuck in that extra finisher that I have.
Nice.
And yeah, then I go back to Scryfall, search for a whole bunch more cards, place a single slaughter, get all those, play test some more. Yeah, it just goes round and round from there. But the main thing is, yeah, that first bit is like EDH rec, going through my cards. Scryfall, you're definitely using Moxfield, definitely using the custom tags if you have the time to use it, and then it's just like cut down until I have something I'm happy with.
It's really funny. That whole process, I was like, yep, I've seen that.
You've
I've watched this process a million times. My process is a bit different. It's a lot more loosey-goosey and God, our personalities show hard when we talk about this stuff. Mine is a lot more loose. I generally will like build a commander deck on the day that I want to build it. Like, if I find the commander, I've got enough cards in my collection that I can make, at the least, a shit version of the deck. At the very least. And this is what happened with Liesa, funnily enough. One of my favorite decks. Built it in a night. I remember I finished it at about 2 o'clock in the morning.
I remember that, I think.
It was during lockdown, and then when we came out of lockdown, I went to the store, and I was like, I've got this new deck. I think it's terrible. Let's go. And it was. It was pretty bad, but it had good synergies. And then everyone was kind of like, oh, maybe you think about running this card. And I'd be like, oh, sweet, do you have it? And they'd pull out their binder, and I'd be like, cool, I'll take that. And my deck building process from there on out is slowly and surely. Like, slowly and surely, my deck will get better. Liesa started as this, just shoved cards from my collection into a deck because I was bored. And now it sits at a really good power level and is a great deck. But it took a year to get there from Commander Legends coming out.
Yeah. I actually really like your process in that I feel like because you trade for so many more of the cards, I almost feel like you're fulfilling the dream of Magic the Gathering's creators a little bit more, because they kind of want you to have a story for your cards, right?
Yeah.
So like some of the cards, you so often, I think more than anybody else that I have played Magic with, will be like, oh, I got this card from here. And especially like
I have a memory link to it.
Yeah, if I'm playing with you, you'll be like, oh, remember when I traded you for this card? I gave you this in exchange. And like you remember. And I do that a little bit myself, but like you really do that. And I think it's really beautiful, actually, to look at a deck and be like, this deck is like a conglomeration of minute stories that I have encountered playing this game, meeting people. Like, I think that's really lovely.
I really do like that sentiment as well. I've never thought about it like that. And now I'm probably because we're going to play some Commander after this, I'm sure. I'm probably now going to play it going, okay, think about this card. Where did this card come from? And something that I just did recently was I realized that my collection was getting huge and I wanted to get rid of a bunch of cards because I don't trade that much anymore because I've kind of got 14 decks. I'm like at the point where I'm happy with Commander, all that kind of stuff. But I thought I'll shift some cards. So recently on our community page, I took a photo of every page in my binder. I saw this post. And I posted it up and I was like, hit me up, DM me if you want any of these cards. My phone was on vibrate while me and my partner there were playing on a game of Switch. And on the coffee table, my phone every second was bzz, bzz, bzz. It got so many messages.
I was at work today, but I really remember checking at one point. I just was on Facebook following up on something else. And oh my god, I hope my employees don't find it out. I checked Facebook one time at work.
How dare you, Walter?
I know, I'm fired.
Using your full name.
Anyway, and I just happened to be on there, and I saw a comment on one of the pages that was Daniel being like, hey, I like that Archmage Emeritus, and you replying being like, it's already gone.
So fast.
Yeah.
So fast. And I also love there was one comment, there was one page that had a Consecrated Sphinx, another really expensive blue card, and I think a Ristic Study. It was like all on one page. It was like boom. And someone just commented, can I take all of these three? And I was like, that's an easy $100.
Yeah, wow.
Dust my hands and walk away.
Damn.
But yeah, I think what you said about the spirit of Magic the Gathering, it's a trading card game. And I do like the way I build decks over time slowly by pulling cards out of other people's binders.
Yeah, it's a nice sentiment to have for sure. Well, look, if we're going... We've been very positive about our deck building experiences. We do have a question that's a little bit more focused on the negative.
And of course it comes from Vi.
Of course it comes from Vi. Oh, we shouldn't be too... Vi's got lots of questions, actually. There's some great ones later.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those ones.
But Vi asks, what's the biggest deck building mistake you've personally made? So what are the pitfalls of deck building, do you think?
Oh, I know mine already.
Yeah?
And I've already talked about it, actually. One of the rules that I break when I build decks is including a lot of mana rocks. The biggest mistake, and I remember I've got a really good story after this, the biggest mistake I do is I rely too heavy on mana acceleration and not enough about hitting every land drop. That is a huge detriment to me, and I'll tell you, I'm going to say Scarab God. Do you remember this? I remember I was tinkering with Scarab God for a while after I built it. And when you're tinkering with a deck that you just really want to work, and I was really wanting Scarab God to work at the time, you keep coming to this conclusion that I think every Magic player has been in this situation where you go, I'll just cut a basic land for this card.
Oh, James. It's the worst mistake you can make.
I know. And this is the thing, like, everyone comes up to me in the game store and is like, oh, can you give me advice here and here and here? Like, you've got a podcast, you know what you're talking about. I'm terrible. I really can't build decks. I'm a bad Magic player.
No.
But this definitely was my biggest mistake. I did a quick count. Actually, no. You told me about Moxfield. I'd never heard of it before.
Oh, this is the first time you used it.
And I put Scarab God into Moxfield, and I looked, and I was like, hey, Walt, how many lands do you run in, like, one of your decks? And you're like, oh, like 35 to 37, 40, depending on what deck it is. I'm like, I'm at 21. And Walt's face, I can't describe it to you. It was one of these things of, imagine, right, your dad, parent, guardian, mum, whoever it is, saying to you, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. That was Walt's facial expression coming to me like some sensei about deck building with Moxfield behind him. He was like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Let me show you the custom tags feature in Moxfield.
Oh my god, I remember that day. And it was so funny because you'd had a bunch of really miserable games where you hadn't been hitting land drops, and it was like, well, this is why.
I was like, I just can't draw lands. How many lands you got? I've got 3. One of our community members, actually, Callum, always makes this joke. It's one of these jokes that has now been said so many times. People say it with him in sync of him making the joke. It's, I can't keep hitting my land drops. And he'll ask, how much mana is your commander to cast? Like 5. And he's like, you need 5 lands. It's fine. 3. Oh, it's 3 lands. 3 lands in your commander deck. It's fine.
Callum's got a lot of sayings like that. You know what? Ironically, the one person who you would probably would understand your decision to run 21 lands is Vi. Vi runs like 25 lands in most of their decks.
Actually, I'm looking in the webcam now. Vi, I'm calling you out. I'm really curious, what's your biggest deck building blunder?
It's actually, I know we talked about the numbers earlier. I wrote them down wrong the first time I wrote them down. I thought it was like 5 everything. So I thought it was like 5.
You included 5 card draw pieces.
5 ramp pieces.
Oh, Walt.
I know. Admittedly, with my 5 wraths, I was wrathing constantly. I remember the first time we went and played at the store, and Callum was like, can we stop wrathing, please?
Yeah, but you were wrathing the board because you'd be only drawing 1 card a turn and it was a wrath.
Because I didn't have any card draw. Yes.
No.
Definitely, when you look at those numbers of what people are recommending for card draw and ramp, 10's a really good one that I see often. I think it's fine. Above, not below those numbers.
Correct.
There is nothing worse than sitting there. I mean, you've alluded to it with lands. The same is true of ramp. There's nothing worse than sitting there and not having enough mana to do the things you want to do. And even worse than that, I would say, is not having enough cards. Everyone hates top decking. Literally everyone.
Yeah.
So just, if you can avoid it, don't do it.
I 100% agree. There's actually no sadder look on any nerd's face than when they say the words land go.
Yeah.
Because that's all they can do. Like, this is the reason why I run a lot of ramp and a lot of card draw, is because at the very least, you've got a lot of mana and you've got a lot of cards in your hand.
Yeah.
You're going to be doing something.
Yeah. You can't really miss with that.
I'm really curious. I'm going to ask everyone else to put their biggest, because this one I think is probably one of the most interesting questions we've answered already. Tell us what your biggest deck flops have been. Or deck building flops. I'm really curious.
I agree. Okay, we're
Second
down
page.
Another one. Ugh. We're killing it.
I specifically threw that away from me.
Yes, and you did very well.
Thank you.
You did very well. Now, look, before we go on, James, I wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to another platform. So we released this podcast on SoundCloud and YouTube, but another platform that we recently have become more active in, TikTok.
Oh my god, we're going to do dances with, what's her face? I can't remember her name. I'm not cool.
We're going to do dances with what's her face, what's her name. Look out for it, guys. No, so I released a TikTok video. It's a version of the text post that our community will be familiar with, Thrifty Thursdays. I made it into a video. It's a bit rough, but I'd like to just actually... We'll play it for the YouTube videos. We'll also play the sound for the SoundCloud video. So here it is. Tell us what you think.
Enjoy.
What if Loyal Unicorn was your best friend? This is my best friend. Yes, she's a unicorn. Yes, occasionally she impales someone. No, she will not eat an apple right out of your hand. Why does everyone keep asking me that? Look, she's many things. A friend, a colleague, a fearsome competitor, a war criminal, a malicious psychopath, a car salesman, but she is also really good at scratching the top of your head. But they didn't tell you that in the newspapers. Together, we're unstoppable. Well, you know, she's unstoppable. Frankly, she could kill me in an instant. Get budgeted! Available now for only 40% of a US dollar. That's 40 cents. This is crazy.
It's the car salesman bit at the end. It absolutely sells that TikTok for me.
The voice?
This is crazy. It's like, do you remember Crazy John's?
Oh,
the phone
it is.
dude?
It's totally the Crazy John voice.
100%.
Yep, agreed.
Look, that's a platform we're dabbling in, which is really exciting, which we're going to do more of. But if you would like to follow us on TikTok, it's G_Commander Community. So if you want to see some funny stuff that I've done, there's a bunch of stuff up there. Walt's now going to turn each Thrifty Thursday, or not each, I don't know about each. I don't want to put too much on you there, but like...
48 episodes later.
But the ones we love, the Thrifty Thursday staples, into TikToks.
Yeah, I'm not going to go ahead and commit to any sort of schedule because I don't know, but I really enjoyed making the first one. I'm going to make some more, so yeah, follow us. I'm definitely going to get better at editing as well, which will be important.
And I'm just going to be my stupid, idiotic self doing TikTok trends, but for magic. So follow us on TikTok.
I think as well, you've mentioned before that you'd like to do a dialogue one with me. So if let's...
one of our podcast skits, you reckon?
Oh,
video form?
That's an interesting idea. I was thinking because some of the Thrifty Thursdays were dialogues. For those who don't know, sorry, I had a weekly post in our Facebook community called Thrifty Thursdays that are like these really zany, strange advertisements for a card. So that video is a good example of one. But some of them are these strange dialogue scenarios.
That's so weird.
So anyway, there's more to come. So follow us there and
something else actually. Ellie and Vi, our two judges within our community, are looking at doing a bit of a judge series, possibly.
So keep an eye out for that as well.
Super keen.
So look, back to the Q&A, James.
Which we still have heaps to go.
We have some questions now. We're sort of moving out of deck building.
Okay.
And towards questions that I've sort of loosely categorized as being about the Commander format. The format of Magic the Gathering.
Interesting.
So right off the bat, Aaron asks, and it sort of relates to deck building as well, actually. How do you tell when a deck is too powerful for your local meta / playgroup?
I feel like I am in a good position to answer this, actually.
I knew you would be.
So if you don't know the story of my Niv Mizzet deck, it started off as a quote-unquote janky casual deck. And then we realized Niv Mizzet is just a 6-mana busted commander. It's insane. So naturally the deck started getting better and better and better, and as I kept building it and tinkering with it, it became phenomenally good. And then there was a point where I had to choose, do I disassemble this deck, or do I dip my toe into the deep, dark black hole that is CEDH? And I made the decision to turn it into CEDH. I researched it quite heavily, looked up a lot of Niv Mizzet control curiosity combo lists, and then went for it. But in casual, there's a couple of indicators where that you're going to find that your deck is getting too powerful for your playgroup or your meta or even a store or even casual commander. You could end up in that Niv Mizzet spot where you just go, screw it, this isn't a casual commander anymore, this is CEDH.
Sure.
First indicator, you're winning all the time. That's usually a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before about how even a good commander deck only wins about 25% of the time. So, I mean, we've mentioned it in the context of, you should have fun when you're losing. But equally, if a deck is winning substantially more than 25% of the time, it might be time to be like, oh, maybe I'm edging a bit too high here.
Like, if something that you think is, I'm not winning enough, screw it, I'm going to get this deck out, you have now graduated to pub stomper. That's this level you're on now. Pub stomping is where you allude that you're not that strong and you go up and beat a bunch of people up in a pub. But in Magic, it's where you say, my deck isn't that powerful, and bring out a really powerful deck. So if you have ever thought, I'm sick of losing, I'm going to bring out this deck because I know it will win, it's probably too powerful for that table.
You shouldn't know you're going to win.
Exactly. 100. You definitely, again, we're playing with 3 opponents, 25% chance that we should win. That's generally, in a pot of 4, 25% chance that you should win. That's a good Commander game. The other thing that's a really strong indicator that is if your deck's too powerful is if you say, I'm going to play this, and your opponents make this noise. It's too powerful for the table. Yes.
I would say the same for when you are playing it as well.
Yeah.
If you find that a table, especially one that has a lot of banter and is having a lot of fun, that 20 minutes into the game has gotten very quiet and people are looking kind of solemnly at their hands, you might be, assuming you're the reason that this has happened, it might be someone else, but, if you can kind of tell that it's your deck that's doing that to people, I would also say that might be a sign that, at the very least, doesn't necessarily mean you've gone like too powerful or whatever, but you've probably undersold your deck in the Rule Zero conversation, which you talk about all the time. But if that's happening every game you play with that deck, then I completely agree. It's time to say, is it really powerful?
Episode 9?
Yeah.
Farewell deck.
Exactly.
Now, the other thing that could be an indicator is if you're not reaching for it anymore because you know it's too good for every table you sit at. And we talked about this the other day, and Yuriko of my deck, Yuriko, is now weirdly at that point where I'm like, is this too powerful for casual? Do I need to make a CDH or do I need to depower it? I actually played it yesterday, it was a pretty high-powered table, and I was like, look, I think Yuriko's fair at this table. It did not win, and I kind of reassured myself, hey, maybe Yuriko is still playable at good tables.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I do like that deck a lot.
It's super fun. Mainly because I didn't get Bolas as Citadel. That was the main reason.
That card's stupid. Our next question comes from Jordan again. Thank you for this, Jordan. Have you ever swapped cards into your decks specifically due to the store meta? What do you think of this? I think I actually have an example here. I have an Arami deck. I actually already mentioned it this episode.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Oh, God. So Arami is a blue-black commander that I won't go into how Encore works. It's actually weirdly complicated, especially the way Arami does Encore. But basically, it lets you make copies of creatures in your graveyard, and you get multiples of them. So the deck is full of creatures that have great ETBs or great death triggers, and you just reanimate them all game. You mill yourself. It's great fun. I love it. It's one of my favorite decks. Adam said that they associate it with me more than almost any other deck, and I was like, that's so interesting. And
weird.
They must just see it all the time, because I must just pull it out a lot, because it's really fun.
Never call you a blue-black mill player. That's so weird.
No. Anyway, but what was happening when I was playing this deck, I kept on playing against Luke, and Luke loves to play Rest in Peace.
Luke just loves to play Esper Evil.
That's
mainly what
he
Luke
does.
likes to
For
play.
a little while, his name in our Facebook chat was Big Meanie.
Yeah, it was too.
One day he was like, "Who changed my name to Big Meanie?" And I was like, "Me, stop bullying
me." Was that after
me.
the game that you played him when it was
Yes,
rested? Yeah, that
it
makes a
definitely
lot
would
of
have
sense.
been. Anyway, the thing about blue-black is that you have one card that sort of semi-permanently deals with an enchantment, because Rest in Peace is an enchantment that exiles your graveyard, and that's Feed the Swarm. So if I am playing my Rami deck, which admittedly does have that card in it, and I can't find Feed the Swarm, my deck does nothing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm just like casting creatures that have half decent ETBs and doing nothing else. I can't even set up by milling myself because Rest in Peace exiles everything, every time, everywhere. Anyway, I don't know if you can tell,
everywhere.
I'm a little bit salty about it still. But what I ended up doing was I started playing cards like Cranial Extraction.
I actually don't know the card.
It's 3 and a black. It's a sorcery. There's a few versions of the effect. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but the vibe is the same. It's like 4 cards to do this.
It's giving Cranial Extraction vibes.
You basically search an opponent's hand, graveyard, and library for a card, and exile it.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, like, in a lot of formats, this card's pretty sick. This lets you be like, hey, I know your deck is going to run this card. It's gone forever.
It's a CDH fringe thing to do.
Potentially.
Like, you can get rid of certain win cons. Like, I know in Godo decks, a lot of people try and hit that helm really quick.
Yeah,
like,
if you can get rid of helm permanently. Yeah. That's true.
It's a fringe thing on CDH. So some people play it.
Yeah, I could see that. And look, I never cast it. Because,
I'm not shocked. How often are you going up against Luke?
Well, this is the thing, right? I was specifically thinking of times where I would be playing against Luke, and I was playing a Rami, and he was playing a deck with Rest in Peace. Like, we talked about win more cards. That's a win more card I've ever heard of, right?
100% is.
And I want to make a little bit of I mean, Jordan did ask, what do I think of choosing cards designed for the store meta? I think you should avoid it as a general rule.
Yeah.
You really don't want to start an arms race where you start playing cards that make people... Like, I love Luke, but I almost blame him a little bit for playing a Silver Bullet card against a graveyard deck, which is Rest in Peace.
Yeah.
So, like, he kind of made me want to run cards that would stop him from doing that because it completely switched off my deck.
Yeah.
I generally think you should avoid... And again, we're talking about Casual Commander here.
Yeah.
You should avoid cards that completely stop one or more players from playing the game.
Silver Bullet is a nice way to put them.
That's a good way of phrasing it. Silver Bullet cards. I think, play your removal, play your board wipes, have versatile removal, have versatile board wipes. In general, especially in Casual Commander, try to avoid casting things that just turn off one strategy because just put yourself in in those shoes. If you're playing a graveyard deck and someone plays Rest in Peace, and especially if you're in colors that cannot deal with a Rest in Peace, like, just imagine you're in that game. How do you feel? You feel terrible.
Yeah.
So, I think don't do it, basically.
I'm going to paint a visual picture. In the movie Detective Pikachu, there's an incredible...
great start to any story.
In the movie Detective Pikachu, starring Ryan Reynolds. What a great start. There is a really great gif of Pikachu out in the rain looking really sad.
I do know that one.
That was Walt's face playing against Rest in Peace in the Rami.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's not good.
Look, Silver Bullets always feel bad. They always suck. Like, something that I found recently, which is a absolute... Like, if you're playing CDH, it's a different category, again. But there was this card that was played in a CDH deck that I'm like, I've never heard of this card before, and I'm so glad I haven't in Casual. Get this. Every time you cast a spell, which in Commander you do every now and then, just once or twice a turn maybe, you bounce a land to your hand.
I don't know the name of this card.
I can't remember the name of the card, and it's
an actual combo piece, though.
It is phenomenal, and it was a combo piece in the deck I was playing against. Yeah. It was a landfall thing. It was insane. It was really cool to watch. But oh my god, I was playing. I hate cards that just completely turn off a deck. Yeah, hate playing against them. Yeah, I try not to get salty, but yeah, those kind of cards are rough to do. And then and you force people to play this. When I read this question, I actually thought very specifically of a time I took a card out of Niv Mizzet. By the way, Niv Mizzet Perun is a Spellslinger commander, card draw engine, is it? Would you ever think about running the card Stigma Lasher?
I knew it. I knew you were going to mention it. You evil man. Evil man.
We've actually booked Walt in for therapy after this podcast.
I'm going to need it. That card is stupid.
So for those that don't know, it's red for a 2/2, but it has Wither. So any damage dealt to a creature, it's done in the form of neg 1 counters. But it has the text on it. It says, if Stigma Lasher would deal damage to a player, that player cannot gain life for the rest of the game. The game! Now, at the time when I ran this card, Walt was playing his Azor the Lawbringer deck, which is a life gain strategy.
Life gain card draw.
Card draw payoff. And that, if I hit him once with it, which, by the way, not only did I run that, I ran Rogue's Passage in Niv Mizzet to ensure I could hit you with it. That's how much of a dick I was.
I will say with these Silver Bullet cards, I think they're more common in smaller metas, right? Like, especially if you don't play in a store and you just have a play group, I reckon this is way more of a thing. And I still think you should avoid it. I think you should, like, if you find you're always running into the same problems, it's like I said before, Make sure your removal is versatile. Like, you know, if you have the means, don't run only creature removal. Have the way to interact with artifacts, a way of interacting with enchantments. In general, I wouldn't bother about planeswalkers because you can always just kill them with combat damage.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, if you can, try to have removal in your deck that deals with creatures, artifacts, enchantments, but don't do these silver bullet cards that make someone feel awful.
For the record, my silver bullet card, the Stigma Lasher, was included in my deck when it was basically just our share house playing Magic, and that was all we played.
We frequently didn't even have a full play group of 4. It was usually 3 of us.
So we had a very contained meta. Like, we started running things that specifically dealt with really big Eldrazi because we needed to.
Yeah, I actually just the other day took Tragic Slip out of my Merrin deck, which I had for the longest time, and I specifically put it in because it was neg 13, which would deal with an indestructible Eldrazi.
There you go.
Like the only way to do it.
Look, I think silver bullet cards, if you're, again, I think this, what I've learned about this episode 10, is be constantly asking yourself questions when you're building decks or playing decks or revising decks, and ask yourself when you put a card into your deck, why am I putting this in the deck?
Yeah, have some awareness of what you're doing. Speaking of, James.
Yeah.
Vi has asked you, why do you play Magic wrong? Why do you play blue and red?
Which is objectively wrong for Vi.
Yes.
Fair enough.
For Vi. Also, I will add, Michaela also asks, James, why do you hate green? I think that there's something in common here across these questions. James, do you want to address the criticisms that have been leveled at you? Do you hate green? Why do you play Magic wrong?
My God, I feel like this is a press conference after a sports game or something. Look, I got a lot of messages about this when we put the Q&A episode out, and I said, send me messages, send Walt messages, and I got asked, why do I hate green? Why are you so invested in blue-red? Look, I think the blue-red thing happened accidentally. I think I liked playing Niv Mizzet, and I just built it, and I got so attached to it, and I loved how it won all the time. I loved that it was powerful, and slowly started to like it. Then I started to realize that it actually encapsulated my personality and my philosophy around myself, around how I approach Commander, because each color of the Magic's wheel has a philosophy in of itself, right?
Especially when you combine 2 together.
Especially when you combine 2. Just, if you've not got it, actually, I really recommend it. If you're a D&D player as well, Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica is a D&D book that Wizards of the Coast printed. It was the first one that they did where it crossed the borders of Magic and D&D. Now they're doing it all the time because it prints money.
Yeah. They also own all the IP, so they don't have to pay anybody to do that.
It's just such a cool thing for nerds. Thank you, Wizards.
Yes, thank you, Wizards.
But Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica really goes in depth about the philosophy of each guild and what it represents and what they value.
Right.
And I looked at the values of each of the colours on the wheel, and blue and red were the things I value most. I value knowledge, which is very blue. I value being learned, being well-informed, not ignorant. And I really like the red's philosophy of passion. And doing creativity and doing things quickly, living like you're probably not going to get tomorrow, which is like a red spell. Take an extra turn after this one. If you don't win, you lose the game. Like that combined with being really informed and really aware is exactly what I believe I am. Or I try to be, or I value.
I think you are.
So that's why I like blue-red. I like blue-red because it's I'm the smartest person in the room, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. But I'm going to make sure I do it in this extravagant way. And like, if you look at the cards from Ravnica that it isn't related, lots of lightning, lots of geniuses in labs with things going on.
Mad scientist vibes, for sure.
Super mad scientist vibes.
Yeah.
So that's what I really love. And I think over time, the more I investigated the more I really just was like, yeah, this is 100% who I am.
For sure.
And the Is It Nails then started being a thing. I got an Is It Pendant. I now actually have a pair of Nike Air Force Ones that are customized to Niv Mizzet.
I think if we can, let's try and throw up a photo on the YouTube video of them. They do look really cool, because you did write Niv Mizzet on them for the SoundCloud listeners, but you also... or Niv Miz, you wrote on it. But you also customize the colors. So they're like white and black, but they're also blue and red. Yeah. And
like the tongue is red, the Nike swoosh is blue.
They look really cool. They look really, really cool.
Easy.
Yeah.
But look, to address the criticisms about green. Now, I do not hate green. I play green. I have a Zaxara deck. I have a Siona deck. I'm building Bear Force 1, which is mono green. I talked about the fact I had a mono green Gishath deck not long ago.
Galta deck.
Galta deck, and I have Gishath as well, obviously.
Yes.
So I don't hate green. I do think green is treated like the youngest child from Wizards. They get everything.
It's like the spoiled younger sibling.
Yeah.
Blue's over here being like, what? You gave green another way to draw cards?
That was my thing! I do that! And then Red's in the corner just banging its head against the wall, just making chaos, not getting any attention. And they're like, red card draw? Oh, they can draw a couple and maybe play them this turn.
James, white is the middle child. Forgotten.
White is the middle child.
Forgotten.
Black is the one that ran away from home.
Yeah, black is the rebel.
It was really good ages ago, and it's just still good today. It ran away and it's still fine.
Oh my god. It's funny, like, I guess you have a sort of persona, and especially people at our store experience you mostly through this persona. And
unfortunately, to my detriment.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say, like, I have spent so much time with you not as the persona. I've seen the persona, obviously, a lot, but I also just, like, spend a lot of time with you in general.
You've seen me on a Saturday morning in my dressing gown.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, when people like, you hate green... I was like, James has so many green decks. Like, in my head, I was just immediately like, elves, dinosaurs. You had a Galta deck. You had a Siona deck. Zaxara. I was like, yeah, there's like stacks of green decks that James plays, but it's just funny. Like, I think it's because you identify with the philosophy so much, it's really obvious. Whereas I think a lot of people would not so much immediately think of me as the Selesnya guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned just before, Adam said that they said that Amarami was the deck they associated with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is the thing, is that, like, more than you, like, you have a bunch of decks that are different colors, and you definitely have a bunch of green decks. I'm the same. I also play mine very equally. I don't really play favorites so much.
I definitely play favorites.
You play favorites a lot. And so I feel like people, every time I come in, like, some people who don't know me so well probably like, wow, every time Walt comes in, there's a new deck. And it's like, I actually have a fixed number of decks, I promise. It's just that I rotate them a bunch. So
and
that
I only play with you once a fortnight. And
exactly.
Yeah. But look, for the record, on voice recording, I'm just going to get closer to the mic so it's well known, but I, James Alvarez, do not hate green. But can it stop getting everything?
Oh my god, now this feels like a press conference. It's like, James, address the allegations. I don't hate green. I don't hate green. I love green. I've got many green friends.
Oh, that's got me. Oh, God. I need to calm down. Oh, sorry.
Deep breaths, James.
It was the American accent that did it. Oh, my God. So we're going to get political, and I don't want to do that, but far out, that was funny. I've got so many green friends. Have you seen me? I'm friends with Walt. He plays green.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, all right. We're going to move on. We're going to jump into the next question.
Let's do it.
All right, David, one of our high-powered players at our store.
Helped organise our CDH event. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. An incredible event. I'm sure you all can agree with.
Yeah, I agree with
David actually runs a lot of stacks decks, and he's talking about stacks. How do you feel about stacks in Casual Commander? Casual Commander is specifically stated there.
Yes, and I feel like David added that caveat because he knew that if he just said, how do you feel about stacks, we would start talking about CDH because David is asking us.
Yeah.
So David's asking how you feel about stacks in Casual Commander. I think it depends a whole lot on the stacks. And I'm sorry to be that guy, to be like, it depends. But it really does. There are, like, really, really varied things that are all considered stacks.
Heuristic Study is considered stacks.
It can be. 100% it can be.
Yeah.
Like, there are cards that say things as innocuous as, like, you can only play one land a turn, or, like, you know, if you play a second land, you have to bounce a land to your hand.
I hate that card. I know exactly what card.
Confounding Conundrum.
That's it.
That's considered a stacks piece. That's, like, pretty innocuous, but like, you know, it's annoying, but it's innocuous.
Printed as a sideboard card in Standard when Zendikar Rising came out.
Yeah. Versus Stasis, which says, like, you basically don't get to untap. Which is horrible, absolutely horrible to play against.
Has killed me, actually, in the past.
Because of your Pact of Negation. Yeah,
Yep.
didn't have the money to pay for it. Yeah. So look, I I like stacks. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's the only way I can conceptualize CDH in my head. Everyone's like, play 1 million spells, win with a combo, and I'm like, what if you couldn't do that though? Wouldn't that be so fun if you just couldn't?
Walt just grew 2 big eyebrows and they're angled completely down into the middle of his head.
I actually, in the CDH event the other day, played in it and played a Yashan Implacable Earth stacks deck.
Can I just say, if you were to continue down the CDH route, which I'm not entirely sure if you will or not, maybe. I see that as your deck.
Yeah,
you piloted
really
that like
it.
You liked it and you sent it.
Yeah. So I've got a special place in my heart for stacks. I think I feel okay about sort of the fairer versions of stacks. And if someone was like, "Hey, I'm playing like this kind of stacks piece," most of the time I'm probably inclined to be like, "Yeah, let's do it." I think like anything remotely stacksy, you should warn the people you're playing with about it beforehand. I think that I've been doing, I think I talked about this before on the podcast, I do this in general, but specifically I have a Sisay Shrines deck that runs a bunch of stacks pieces. I pull every single one of them out of the deck, and I just say, okay, like, this is what I'm talking about. I have some stacks. It's going to be things like, you can't cast more than 1 spell a turn. Things like, creature cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield from Kenoros, Hand of Death. It's going to have Lavinia. You can't cast spells with mana value greater than the number of lands you control. It's going to be things like Sphere of Safety. You can't attack me unless you pay X, where X is the number of enchantments I control. Like, this is the kind of things that are going to happen. And look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Most of the time when I pull out Sisay and say, hey, I've got this Shrines deck, it runs some stacks pieces, here's what they are, people don't say, no, I won't play with you, but they kind of go, oh, maybe I'll swap decks, and I go, no, that's fine. The fact that you're thinking of swapping decks means I know that this isn't the pod for it, and I put it away again.
I'm so glad you ended that like that, because what I wanted to say is, because I think this episode of our podcast isn't recommendations. We're not making recommendations here. We're just answering questions that you guys have asked personally. We're actually trying to think about this the least we can and kind of talk about it kind of off the cuff, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of stacks pieces, there's a salt meter, right? And stacks pieces generally sit pretty high. Like, if you go onto the EDH Rec website, there's actually a tab where you can look up there's a salt rating.
And they're pretty good at updating that. They do the quiz every year and see how cards like adjust over time.
But like, most of the cards you'll see on there are Winter Orb, Smokestacks, all that kind of stuff. And because they're really long hated salty cards, right? Now, I personally, again, I'm like Walt. I don't mind stacks. I don't mind going up against it. In Casual Commander, in CDH, don't mind. But something that I will say as a but here is we are a big advocate for Rule Zero conversations and making sure that you're having the right game of Commander with the right people with the right cards. Stacks cards are one of those like red fire alarm type cards where you should be talking about them. And it's not a question that we like. If you're at a table and you go, oh yeah, I can play this deck because James and Walt said they're fine with stacks at a casual table. No, we're not at that table. Check with your table.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it really depends who you're playing with. Warn them a lot. But I love stacks. My Sister Shrines deck, I'm really proud of the fact that it plays that stacksy way, because I kind of built the deck to play around the stacks. Like, there's a bunch of ways that make it so that players can only cast 1 spell a turn, because Sisay has a 5 mana activated ability that gets all the best spells in your deck onto the battlefield. So you don't care about the casting things.
It's activated abilities, but
exactly.
See, it's funny, we're talking about stacks, and I actually was like, I don't have a stacks deck. Oh, but I have Liaisa, because that runs Rule of Law, the Windborn Muse, it runs those kinds of things.
I would call most of the effects I would call Liaisa's effect to stacks.
Because it's costing you 2 life for every spell.
Yeah.
And I used to refer to that deck as Death and Taxes, light on the taxes, heavy on the death. That's how I used to refer to it. But I'm actually going to, tonight I'm going to go look through it, and I'm going to put a couple more light-hearted stacks pieces in, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I am James Alvarez, Walt Dyson, okay with stacks pieces.
Yeah, for sure. James, one for you, I think.
Sure.
I mean, look, I'm interested as well, but I'm interested to hear what you say about it. Vi again has asked, what is the most appealing thing about Casual Commander for you?
I love Casual Commander. It's funny. I'm glad that I get to answer this question, because I feel recently I've been preaching CDH and playing a lot of CDH, But Casual Commander is where I smile the most. That's where I enjoy Magic. CDH is like a puzzle and a problem that I have to solve, and I'm very competitive when I get in CDH.
It's a different mindset, for sure.
It's a different mindset. It's the difference between riding a motorbike through the country and riding it in a race.
Yeah.
The difference, right?
That makes sense to me. Yep.
So when I'm riding my motorbike through the country, playing Casual Commander, there are things that I think that you cannot get anywhere else except in a game of Commander. And the biggest one, and I'm going to sound like the president of our community, is the community aspect of it. This is something that we have recently unlocked in our community space, which is not just a group of friends, but a wider community of people coming together with a common interest. And I've been blown away by how big that can get and how heartwarming it can feel to be a part of it. So if you're not from our community, every Tuesday night we have our Commander the Gathering night, which is where we all just get into our local game store at Good Games Greensboro and we just play a bunch of Casual Commander games. We also do a raffle, which is a really fun, kind of janky way that we decided that we were going to do every week because it brought us all in the store together at the front of the store when we drew out the raffle. And every single week I get up to draw the prize, and usually it's a great opportunity for me to update the community on this podcast or another event that's coming up, something like that. And I am not a person that gets stage fright. I am fine with talking in front of crowds. But with this community, I get this weird kind of version of stage fright where I look out and every single person there I've got some kind of personal connection with. It's like a room full of maybe 80 people. And I'm like, I care about every single one of these people so much. And they care about me and this game and this thing that we do on a Tuesday night. I think part of the reason why I've become so emotionally attached to this is I had my 25th birthday a couple of days ago.
You did? Yeah. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank
Let's
you.
get some happy birthdays in the comments, please, for James.
25. That's like quarter life crisis time, right? That's where it should happen.
Sure.
So I did a bit of self-reflecting and I looked on things, and something that I realized as I've gotten older is hanging out with friends is increasingly hard to organize. Everyone's got busy schedules. Everyone's busy. Everyone is busy. Now that we're out of lockdown as well, everyone's just nuts. I'm glad that me and you have this podcast is because every fortnight we've got an excuse to come together and chat.
It's true. Bizarrely, I think for a lot of you who know how good friends me and James are, we actually don't see each other that much outside of playing Commander on Tuesdays, Pauper on Mondays every now and then, and this podcast. Yeah.
So it's a good excuse, and it's, again, Magic has brought us together in that way, but now I have a huge community that I get to hang out with every single Tuesday night. I wouldn't give that up for all of King's Gold, like, at all. Like, I think that is just so special. There's a bunch of other things that I love about Casual Commander as well. The social aspect of being able to sit down and talk while you're playing. It's like playing board game. We used to have game night with my family when we were little, where we'd play Monopoly or Snakes and Ladders was an absolute winner. We loved Snakes and Ladders when we were kids.
Of course.
Me and my sister had one of the ones where it's like an outdoor version where you're the pieces and a big blow-up dice.
Yeah.
Remember that so fondly. So we used to do that. And I think the reason I like Casual Commander is because while you're playing, you pause a bit, you talk about something that's outside of Commander, you talk about your week, you talk about work, you talk about your love life, you talk about whatever it is. You can't get that anywhere else while you're doing something that's as fun as playing a game of Commander. The other thing that I love, which we just spoke about, is self-expression. I believe that red-blue encapsulates who I am as a person. So when I play a red-blue deck, it's like I'm communicating who I am to the table through this art form, weirdly, which is deck building.
Yeah, I agree.
How bizarre.
I completely agree. I definitely resonate a lot with the, it's sort of like being an excuse to see people. I don't drink, actually. Some people might not know about me.
I do.
Anyway, and it's actually difficult when you don't drink, especially in a country like Australia. I won't get into it, but that has a lot of drinking involved in just the social life that we live in.
That's the culture.
It's difficult to find places and reasons to spend time with communities of people that do not involve or revolve around alcohol.
In Australia, and especially in our age bracket too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm only a year older than James, so 25, 26, like that's what a lot of people are doing, right?
Yeah.
And it's also like you would think, you sort of say to yourself a lot, especially when you get into your 20s, you're like, oh, I could just like call that person and we could just hang out. I could just hang out with blah blah. But like in practice, especially when you're a guy and it feels a bit harder to do this kind of scheduling, it's a lot easier to have an excuse to hang out and be like, hey, do you feel like doing this? Do you feel like seeing a movie? And I love Commander because no matter what I do for my work and for every other aspect of my life, if I can, I will go on a Tuesday night and I will spend, 3 to 4 hours with people, hanging out, laughing, having fun. And there's actually, like, it is hard to find communities that don't revolve around alcohol that are like that. So I
think
think
it's so frequent.
Yes, scheduled in, no matter what, it's going to be there. Yeah, it's really valuable, and I agree. It's the best thing about Casual Commander is you're really, the game is kind of an excuse just to spend time with people. And
the people that get you. And the last thing I want to say on this point is about, this is actually in our company's constitution that I wrote. And it's our mission statement. And our mission is to become our vision is to become the player's choice of Magic the Gathering in Australia. But our mission is to create a safe and welcoming environment for people of all backgrounds to come and express themselves through the form of Magic. Now, recently, I won't name them, but we had a brand new member come into the store that was very nervous to come into the store. They had never played Magic the Gathering before.
Wow.
B, had never gone into a game store before.
So huge for that person to have taken the step of come to the store, play a game you've never played before. Yeah.
Massive step. And I was having a chat with them and I was so impressed by their, ability to go, right, social anxiety, going to overcome this and step foot into here. And this was on one of our Tuesday nights, which, as you know, busy. Yeah. Really socially
a lot of
active.
people in that room.
Now, a lot of people in that room, including, yourself, like you've admitted to having some social anxiety tendencies before. Yep. That room, even though it is chaotic and loud and hectic and so many social things happening, is a safe space for so many people in our community that they feel like they can express themselves and talk and be comfortable and be accepted. We've got people from all backgrounds, all sit on the gender spectrum in every capacity, sexual orientation, racial background, and they feel accepted and safe in that game store. What an awesome thing we've created. And I had this conversation with, I'll name this person because I'm giving him props, Johnny. Johnny actually mentioned something from personal, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but Johnny actually said before he came into this community, the only way he would talk to friends and talk to people is when he was playing online video games through a headset.
Right.
When was the last time you had a deep and meaningful conversation with someone through a headset on a computer?
Yeah, can't remember the last time.
How many times have me and you been playing Pauper at the kitchen table and had a good conversation?
Yeah, stacks.
Heaps. And this is something that I think is also incredible about the Casual Commander format, because you are getting minimum 3-4 people in a room together that care about each other, love and accept each other, and have a common interest. That is a safe space. That is what a safe space is. That's what it should be.
I completely agree.
Damn, great question, Vi.
Yeah, thanks, Vi. Very philosophical in the end there. But look, we have a podcast. We really care about the format.
Yeah, 100%.
Again, thanks for asking us that. Jordan's got another one. It's kind of going back to the deck building a little bit, but sort of more about the format still, I would say. Jordan asks us, have you ever intentionally downgraded a card in your deck? So the example he gives is, have you swapped a card for a less powerful version of the same effect?
I don't think I've ever swapped it out for a less powerful version, but I have just gone, I'm removing this card from the deck.
Oh, which card?
I've mentioned it a couple of times, like Freed from the Real and Penzara from Zaxara.
Yeah, just the infinite combos.
Screw it. I was like, this deck, it's now boring. And I didn't want it to be that, so I just took it out and I replaced it with Basic Forest, baby. All you need to do if you've got a problematic card, and you talked about this with Kaza, where it's a really problematic card, is Ghostly Flicker. You sneeze and that thing combos. Take it out, put a basic island in, problem solved. If you have a one card that's super problematic, take it out, put a basic land in.
Yeah.
Don't even spend a second to think about it.
Well, or like the example that I use with Ghostly Flicker is I actually have a card or two in like the commander doesn't have an actual sideboard, but they sit in the box with the deck, a couple of spare cards. And so I can just swap Ghostly Flicker out for something else. I think Who
says commander doesn't have a sideboard?
I think these days I'd leave Ghostly Flicker out, but I don't think I've intentionally downgraded a card. I think the only deck I've done this for specifically would be I had my Azor the Lawbringer deck, which I've talked about a few times this episode. It was my first commander deck. And I have upgraded it a lot over time.
From the day where it was pulled from an iPad box out of the underground of the house.
The iPad box full of, janky, unsleeved, dirty cards. I had this super janky thing that I basically just wanted an excuse to play Chasm Skulker and Ajani's Pridemate, because I thought those two cards were the coolest things ever.
Chasm Skulker still is one of the coolest cards
It's still in the deck. I have a similar card to Ajani's Pridemate, which is the one that has double strike if you have 25 or more life.
What? That's
Otherwise,
wild.
it's the same thing. I think it's called like something Paladin. Really cool card.
Anyway, just quickly, Chasm Skulker, every time you draw a card, you put a +1 counter. When it dies, it basically, all the +1 counters turn into 1/1 island walking squids.
Yeah.
Ajani's Pridemate is whenever you gain life, you put a +1 counter on.
Thank you. I completely missed that some people would know that. Anyway, because I just kept on putting more and more powerful cards in it, I was like, and it's, to be honest, because you were building a CDH deck, like it wasn't when it was CDH, but it was getting competitive. I was like, oh, what would Azor look like if I made him really, really strong? And so I just kept putting in more and more like really strong cards. Cards like Aura of Silence.
Oh, yeah.
1/1 enchantment. You can sack it to destroy an artifact or enchantment, but it also makes artifact and enchantment spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more.
It's really good.
So that's a good example of stacks, actually, funnily enough. Anyway, I put all these cards in, and then I found that there was never a pod that it was good for. I played in a high-powered pod and actually still wasn't quite strong enough for like really high-powered. I never played CDH with it, but it wasn't really powerful enough for high-powered, and it was way too annoying and awful to play against for casual. Yeah. So I ended up just pulling the plug and being like, that's it, it's becoming a casual deck again. I went the opposite way and took out like a bunch of the stacks
put the pet cards back in the deck.
Basically, I ended up putting in, I actually, the other day cut him again, but I put for a little while, I had Daxos of Miletus in the deck. Do you remember when that was a card?
He was an alternate commander option for a while, right?
Yeah. If people really didn't want to play against Azor, I would swap him out. I never actually ended up doing it, but he's like 1 white blue. I think he's a 3/3. He can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less.
Yep.
And when he deals combat damage to a player, they reveal the top card of their library. You gain life equal to its mana value, and you can cast it this turn, but you have to pay the mana cost. You can pay any color, mana of any color, but you have to pay the mana cost of the card.
James has pulled it up on his phone, and Walt is so close. The only thing that you got wrong is it can't be blocked by creatures power 3 or greater.
3 or greater.
Yeah, it's a 2/2.
And it's a 2/2. Yeah, that makes more sense.
And by the way, this is back in the day when Daxos was just a legendary human soldier. He wasn't no demigod yet.
Nah. Back in the day. Anyway, so I ended up taking out a bunch of the really, really strong interactive cards, the really strong stacks pieces, and putting back in the fun, goofy synergy. I put Paladin class and Wizard class in the deck because they're just kind of wacky, and like if you can level them all the way up, they become amazing. And
it's really funny. I'm actually going to name a card that I took out of a deck that I'm thinking about putting back in a deck just because it's fun. Nasset Metamorph. Do you remember that card?
Yeah!
1 and a blue for a weird little 1/1. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you target an opponent, and you reveal cards from the top of their library until you reveal a creature card. Nasset Metamorph becomes a copy of that card until end of turn. I used to run that in Yuriko because there's a really weird synergy in Yuriko that if there's a big creature deck at the table, you can have this awesome effect by punching one player for a lot of life, or you get a weird creature with death touch or something that they don't want to block. Generally, sometimes you'll get a creature that just comes out and is really good and they don't block it. Then you can ninjutsu it back. And it's cheap enough to then put back down as a blocker, which when it blocks, it also does the same thing. Oh, it does it when it
blocks too? I forgot about that.
So it's goofy. Actually a really cool card. And
it was very fun to play with and against.
It's one of those, what will it be? Like every time Gishath hits, it'll spin the wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm thinking about putting it back in Yuriko because again, Yuriko's
you're trying to get it a little bit lower. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's, I think, a fun thing about when you do decide to intentionally bring the power level down a little bit of your deck is it often lets you, put the pet cards back in.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are funny and fun to play.
And you probably have a lot of stories with and have a strong affinity for.
Absolutely you do.
All right, another Vi question coming at you. And I'm actually I love the wording of this question. What's your favorite bad strategy?
Oh.
Great question.
Interesting.
Really good question.
I think it pains me to say, but I have to say tokens.
I knew you were going to say tokens. I can't lie.
It's like, I absolutely love it. Anyone who's played against me knows that, like, even if my deck looks like it's being one thing, it looks like it's doing polymorph, really it's a token deck. It's always a token deck. It's the meme of the astronaut pointing at the Earth. It's like, is this a token deck? Always was.
Always was.
Always was. That's basically how I build every single one of my decks. But when someone board wipes and you're playing a token deck, it just sucks. And it means you have to build your deck entirely around, like, having board wipe protection. When I was telling people about, like, the way that I separate the cards in my deck when I'm building it, I mentioned that I have a whole category that I call protection. And that was the only one that a bunch of people were like, what? And then I was like, cards that protect your game plan. And some people were just, like, befuddled. They just, like, couldn't get their head around that.
What kind of strategy is this?
Yeah.
What token?
And it's like, no. When you play tokens or you play creature-based strategies, you have to have, like, target creature gains protection for the color of your choice until end of turn. Target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Target creature gains hexproof until end of turn.
Heroic intervention.
Yeah, heroic intervention. I mean, that one is at least is played a lot. But
Teferi's protection, another great card.
That's a very, very good one, but very expensive. But yeah, so I have to say, creature-based strategies, they're so fun, but they're very susceptible to being blown up. And people play a lot of board wipes in Commander. So look, it's my favorite bad strategy, I would say. How about you?
Well, firstly, I want to make a point that I knew you were going to say tokens for this, because I remember you, when you built Kaza, and I'm so glad it got mentioned again. I remember looking through the list, and I was like, yeah, it's Wizard Tribal. It's a tribal deck. Walt loves tribal. Wait, what's creating 2/2 blue wizard tokens? How the hell have you found a card that poops out 2/2 blue wizards?
Oh, it's Casmino, right? I think it's Casmino.
It's a plain
it's War of the Spark.
From War of the Spark. It's just got a down tick on it that says create a 2/2 blue wizard token.
And draw a card, discard a card, make a 2/2 blue wizard, and then it gives it basically gives them a version of all your permanents. Your creatures have basically, what did they call it? It's got a name now. Ward. It's basically Ward.
Is it Ward?
It's not Ward, because Ward is like, it's counted unless you pay the cost. It just says they cost 2 more to cast.
Okay.
So if they try and target your creatures, it costs 2 more. So it's actually pretty relevant.
It is actually really solid. And Casmina's had a new card, obviously, in the Simic one.
Yes, that's true.
Casmina, Egmatic Mentor, is 3 and a blue for a legendary planeswalker Casmina. 5 starting loyalty. Spells your opponents cast that target a creature or planeswalker you control cost 2 more.
Interesting.
So
Planeswalker 2.
Ward before it was Ward.
Yep.
And then down tick of 2 is create a 2/2 blue wizard creature token, draw a card, discard a card.
Yeah. So it's basically
not bad.
It poops out wizards is the main thing in a wizard tribal deck.
I was just so shocked that like you had a tribal deck. I was like, how did you get a 2/2 blue wizard?
I can't help myself. How about you? So your favorite bad strategy? What do you reckon?
Alright, I'm going to ask someone to insert the gif or the meme of that Italian soccer coach going, sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Storm. That meme is Storm. Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Yep.
Storm is where you try and cast as many spells as possible and have a payoff. The problem with Storm is as you start storming, as you start going through the process, a lot of Storm is casting cards to draw a card, to make mana, to kind of keep the wheels turning. Then you can cast like a gut shot, right? There we go. The problem is, when you start, you don't know if you're going to get to your goal at the end.
Half the time you're like, I hope I draw the card that's the payoff. Yeah.
And there's a really good, and I think he's asked a couple of questions in here already, but Ben has a really cool Storm deck. I can't remember the name of Commander for the life of me. 1 blue and a red. It's the Night Day one from Midnight Hunt. I think it's a wizard. Every time night becomes day, you put a counter on it, a +1 counter on it. and spells cost that much less for how many counters he's got.
I think you have to tap it and then they cost that much less.
Yes.
But it's a super wacky commander.
Really weird
Really
card.
Cool though.
Super cool is it Storm card.
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
It's like Mum, I want Mizzix. No, we have Mizzix at home. That's what that card is. Yeah. Wow, we are meme connoisseurs tonight. We're really pumping out the memes. But Ben has a really cool deck of that. And it's basically do nothing, do nothing, do nothing, do nothing. All right, guys, I'm going to try and win. Go to the front of the store, get a drink, get some snacks.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes
playing solitaire,
seeing if I can win.
Yeah.
And it's literally sometimes Ben will be like, all right, I'm going to pass the turn. I'm going to keep going to see if I would have won, but I'm going to concede here. Because he knows that everyone hates sitting against it.
Yeah. I actually, funnily enough, it's funny that you mentioned Storm because Vi asked this question, because Vi once pulled out a 5-color Storm deck and they were like, hey, do you mind if I play this? And I was like, who's the commander? And they were like, oh, it's this custom one. And it was like basically a vanilla creature. I think they had gotten like a custom card.
Oh,
like
cool.
It was like a custom made card. But it did like almost nothing. And they were like, yeah, I just wanted to build 5-color Storm and I didn't want it to be busted. So I just have like a random 5-color. Like it just is a creature, basically. That's 5 colors.
Yeah. 5 mana, 4/4, something
like that. Anyway, completely wrecked us. But then, like, yeah, it would either do that or it would fizzle out and do nothing and then you lose.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Yep, exactly right. Hey, James, we're at the end of this
I'm so excited. We can throw a page.
Let's do it.
Yeah, this way. Oh my god.
Okay.
Not bad. Wow.
We survived.
It landed upright.
Oh.
It's standing on its end.
Maybe I'm magic. Maybe that's the real the real story. All right, I'm afraid that is all we have time for. You'll have to tune in next time for episode 11, which will be part 2 of our Q&A. We'll see you then. Bye.